Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss proportional representation and Labour again, as Starmer's spokesperson poured more water on the idea that Labour will be getting behind the move anytime soon, which we sort of knew anyway, but also how people are misinterpreting what was actually said and how people are also missing something else Starmer said, which puts PR squarely on the table, but for a future election. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So an article in Byline Times got a lot of people hopping about, where it reported on some things which Keir Starmer's spokesperson said about the Labour leader's attitude towards proportional representation. Now, the fact that it was the spokesperson talking, not Starmer, doesn't make any difference because they wouldn't say anything on Starmer's behalf without having discussed it first. And if they did say something out of turn accidentally, it would have been hastily corrected. The main issue I have is with how some people have been reporting this, and they're basing their thoughts on a report in a newspaper, albeit a good newspaper, where the actual conversation was not quoted. In political statements, every word is carefully considered. So when you don't actually report the word said, then it's easy to jump to the wrong conclusions. The only word out of the entire exchange, both question and answer, that was reported was yes. So let's go through what the article does and doesn't say. And I'll link it, of course, below for people to read at their leisure if they haven't already. So it does say that proportional representation isn't a priority for Keir Starmer. Is that the same thing as saying he's no intention to ever deliver it? No. Is it saying that we can forget about seeing it in his first manifesto? Yeah, that's it basically. And that's also not new. He's been saying that for a couple of years. So next thing in the article, it describes Starmer as saying he has a long-standing view against proportional representation. Now this is new. But it is also been misinterpreted in two ways. First, people refer to a statement he made a few years ago where he said, the fact that many people feel their vote goes to waste needs addressing. People are this week trying to claim he was supporting PR at the time and now has backtracked. But he wasn't. In fact, many of the Kick Starmer out brigade who are trying to take this line have consistently said that he's never backed PR. So how come all of a sudden they now think that he did and he's backtracking? All he's saying in the video is that people should not feel their vote is being wasted. PR is one way to stop people feeling their vote is being wasted. And it is the obvious option. It's certainly my preferred option. But it isn't the only one. For example, Starmer may feel that when people have more say in local decision making as a result of his decentralisation plans and reform of the House of Lords, that he will have addressed it. This will be especially true if the way we elect the new representatives in the new House of Lords is via a system like PR. Will he have solved it to everyone's satisfaction? No. But will he be able to claim that he has addressed the issue, which he pointed out in 2020? Yes. The second way it's been misinterpreted is in believing that it must mean he's against PR as a concept and will not introduce it under any circumstances while he's leader. No, this is just wrong. There's nothing even subjective about it. Byline Times, as I say, have not reported the exact words in the exchange. Now, I'm not suggesting that they're trying to misrepresent what he said. I'm quite sure they're not. But when you leave blanks, people will fill the blanks in. Like politicians often deliberately leave blanks, as I'll explain later in this video. My personal view is that journalists should not. For example, what if the spokesperson was simply talking about the first term in office? What if the journalists asking the questions didn't pin down exactly what they meant? What if they did and just didn't report it? Really important when reading any account to focus on what is known and what a blank's been filled in. And it's actually especially important when it is a spokesperson talking. Because although the spokesperson will not say anything that hasn't been pre-approved with Starmer beforehand, when the policy changes a few years down the line and someone says, oh, but your spokesperson said this, he can turn around and go, oh, no, I didn't realise they'd said that. I didn't actually mean that. Oh, there was lost in translation. Happens all the time. Spokespeople are brilliant for that because they can say something which at the time you want them to say. And then years later say, they must have misunderstood me. And you haven't lied and you haven't U-turned. Someone just misunderstood a thing. But it's natural for us want to fill in blanks, and politicians know that. We want to fill in blanks for an incomplete picture. It's just how our brain works. So how do I respond to this latest article? Well, it contains the line about not being a priority still. And that's been the line for the last few years. It's not a priority, not a priority. That basically proves that they're not ruling it out forever. If they were saying it was a bad policy, they would describe it as such. Not a priority means, actually, it might be a good idea, just not an urgent idea. And there are two things which I would say are really important to bear in mind in this specific case. The first is that Labour in opposition makes certain statements to hype up or down a concept, but then miraculously seem to change it in office. Now, I don't mean they promise one thing in the manifesto and deliberately fail to deliver. That's just the Tories and maybe more recently the DUP. I mean that they nullify accusations of promising unrealistic benefits by toning many of them down. Labour did it in the 90s. Just like now. In the 90s, they were cool on the idea of major public sector pay rises because at the time the Tories were suppressing public sector pay and people going, well, Labour should really be boosting it, and Blair was a bit quiet on it. But we still got those big pay rises when they were in power. It was like before the election, you would think, oh, we're not really going to get very much. After the election, we got it. And that's because all voters wanted to know was that Labour would focus on certain key priorities and not try to do too much and end up making a mess of it all. But once you're in power, as long as you are seen to be delivering those core priorities, people are not going to object to you delivering even more. Consider that one of the major learning points to emerge from post-election polling after the 2019 general election is that people broadly approved of the policies in Corbyn's manifesto. They just didn't believe he'd deliver it. It was all too much. It seemed too much. It was too much. So the 90s demonstrated that it is better to focus your offer in the general election and then over-deliver in government. Deliver more. Now, I'm not saying that Labour are suddenly going to flip to PR in their first term. It's clear that that's not going to happen. It's clear that Starmer wants his reform of the House of Lords and decentralising decision-making first. These are huge reforms that will easily eat up an entire parliament or more to deliver them. But just because a Labour leader downplays certain policies doesn't mean they're ruling them out, even if it sounds like it. Even if they say it explicitly, which he isn't here, because it's happened before. It's not hypothetical. Anyone who observed Labour during the last years of their previous period in opposition and then what happened in government, we've seen it all played out before. The second thing to consider is that political statements are always deliberately intended to be ambiguous. To win, Labour need maybe 13 million votes. The Tories will claim to offer 100% of what voters want. They will claim that they will deliver the best public services like never before. You've never seen anything like it in your life, whilst also reducing taxes. We've seen it time and again. What do we get? Poorer public services and higher taxes. We know that. But they will offer the better public services and they will say they're going to reduce taxes. In fact, in the budget before next year's election, they will reduce taxes. They'll all be there. We've seen it time and again. And if Labour do not play the game, they cannot possibly win against such a shiny offer. So how do Labour play the game without being as dirty as promising something they have no intention to deliver? They have to be careful with their choice of words. You deliberately leave a few blanks for people to fill in themselves, like a kid's activity book. People have read this Byline Times article. In fact, they've mostly read like one paragraph and concluded that Starmer is ruling out PR as a concept. This is not what he, or in this case, his spokesperson, has said at all. The fact that they're still using the line "not a priority" is a giant dog whistle to electoral reform campaigners who are choosing to completely ignore it. The point of a dog whistle is you're supposed to hear it if you're the dog. Not a priority means not right now. Put yourself in the position of a prospective Prime Minister or their spokesperson answering a question about PR if you didn't intend to go ahead with it. If you're actually going, no. Would you say not a priority? No, because that means you'll get around to it once your priorities are delivered. You would say, people don't want it, or, oh, it's got more problems than solutions, something like that. That's not what they're saying. Now, of course, saying not a priority doesn't prove that they are going to get around to it, but it does disprove the notion that they've shut the gate on the idea. Not a priority is wait and see. A well-known supporter of proportional representation within the parliamentary party, Clive Lewis, very vocal, he posed a couple of questions in a tweet about it to people who were going mad about it. He asked, how do you grow the movement and how do you escalate tactics? See, the problem that PR faces is the same problem that reversing Brexit faces. People in support of those policies don't want to address these steps. Maybe because it's a lot of effort. It will be a lot of effort. Or maybe because they already think that the ideas have widespread appeal amongst the public and it's only a small number of obstinate politicians standing in the way. Really not. Starmer is clearly completely focused on winning the election and delivering the changes he's set out. So the way to accelerate plans for reform, whether PR or rejoining the EU, is to mobilise and persuade. Mobilise so that the arguments are shared with as many people as possible, and persuade to make sure those arguments are compelling. It's no point in getting yourself heard and ranting about a thing without being persuasive, because you change nobody's mind. You get everyone who already agrees with you going, yeah, right on, and everyone else who doesn't go, what was that about? Where the Remain argument went wrong in 2016 was in failing to demonstrate the benefits of being EU members. The focus was on the damage done by leaving, which was entirely hypothetical as far as many voters were concerned. And it was then easily dismissed as Project Fear by various schools in Parliament. We needed to point out things that were tangible, that we had, that we'd be losing. Because Starmer has said something else recently that's worth remembering. In an article, I think it was in The Economist, Starmer was reported to have been talking about his programme of reform, talking about how important it is, these sort of 5 platform areas. And he said anything, any policy which doesn't work to achieving these aims is dropped. It's like, we haven't got time for it. Anything which works towards it is being done. Well, the thing about Starmer's reforms is they may work out brilliantly, but as soon as the Tories return to office, and with the current system, they will return to office. Could be 10 years' time, could be 15, but they will come back. And then they can then destroy all of those reforms. And they can destroy them way quicker than it took to build. That right there is a powerful motivation for Starmer to adopt PR, but later on. Because think about it strategically. If he were to adopt PR immediately, can he get these reforms through? No. Because he'd have to form a coalition with, say, the Lib Dems. They wouldn't be in favour of it. There's no other party that's in favour of these reforms. But once the reforms are largely in place, it's also the case that other parties, other progressive parties, wouldn't seek to dismantle them. And also, if they're working with Labour anyway, they wouldn't be able to. So strategically, if you want these reforms in place, you need 100% of the power to do so. But then, once they're in, you then need to switch to defence. You need to defend them. Once they're in, it'll take some time. The Conservatives will start to be looking a bit more appealing to the public. At that point, PR will work towards his aims. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.